Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amherst Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of History Organizations. I want to welcome you all to this afternoon's presentation where we're going to be talking about the second round of collections assessment grants. The collections assessment grants are brought to us with funding from Connecticut Humanities, and not by us, actually. We're just hosting this session. It is the Connecticut Heritage Foundation that actually is sort of running this program. So we have with us here today, in addition to Emily Garfinkel, our membership and programs manager, who will be manning the recording, helping to monitor the chat, and sending a follow-up email with information about the recording to all of you and anyone else who registered after the fact, along with helpful links and anything that comes up during the session. We have with us Kathy Craughwell-Varda, who runs Conservation Connection out of the Connecticut State Library, and is involved with the Connecticut Heritage Foundation as well, and is basically running the collections assessment grant program, as well as a million other things around Connecticut. And Lian Partridge, who's the grants and programs assistant.
Grants manager.
Grants manager. It's all the titles keeps changing at CGH, so I can't keep track. Anyway, congratulations on your promotion, Lian. And we're really glad to have her here to show us a little bit about the Connecticut Humanities Grant Portal. And lastly, we have with us Dianne Trueb from the Ellington Historical Society, who was in the first round of collections assessment grants, is going to share a little bit about what Ellington Historical Society has been able to do as a result of that grant program. So I'm going to hand things over to Kathy and stop speaking. If you have questions as we go, please pop them in the chat, and we'll have plenty of opportunity for Q&A after our presentations. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Just unmute yourself, Kathy. Go ahead.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see all of you and to be able to talk to you about round 2 of the Collections Assessment Grant. As Amherst mentioned, I'm the Director of Conservation Connection. And I manage the Collections Assessment Grant for the Connecticut Heritage Foundation, which is the foundation arm of the Connecticut State Library. And this is a partnership grant between them and Connecticut Humanities. We already had round 1, where 25 organizations in Connecticut received half-day museum or archive site visits. So I want to go over the program a little bit with you today. We have Dianne to share her experiences being part of our round 1. So she was one of our early guinea pigs. And she will share with you what it was like to work with the collection assessor and their outcomes so far. And then we'll go through the application to kind of show you the kind of information we need to collect, and then we can take any questions you have. So the Collections Assessment Grant is a free half-day site visit, about a 3-hour visit. You select either to have your museum or your archive collection assessed by a museum professional. And we have a team of museum curators, collection managers, and archivists who are available. They go out, they look at everything to do with that collection, policies, procedures, collection management, exhibition, collection storage. They're there to answer questions while they're on site with you. And then within about a month, they provide you with a report that has their observations, recommendations, and they'll share any resources that'll help you implement any of the recommendations that they make. We assign the assessors to you based on the scope of your project. This is a competitive grant, so there is a grant panel review. We will be funding 25 institutions. The closing date of the grant is May 19th, and by the end of June, we will be getting out information about who has been funded. And then you have until October 1st to finish the work. Your part of the work is really contacting and being in touch with your assessor, opening the door, making the things available and accessible to them, and then waiting for that nice report to arrive. Like I said, we have guidelines that are on the Conservation Connection website that are also in the Connecticut Humanities portal, which is where you will go to apply for this grant. And we'll go over those applications in a moment. But first, I would like to introduce Dianne Trueb. She is a member of the board of the Ellington Historical Society. And she was one of the recipients of a collections assessment grant for their archive collection, and has already had her site visit and report. So Dianne, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like applying for this program, working with your assessor? Can you tell us about the experience up in Ellington?
Okay, I'd love to. So applying, the best part of the application process, I did not find very cumbersome at all, because you do it on online, and then you, Kathy, reviewed it for us. And what happens is you put your comments right under what we submitted. And basically, I just add whatever you suggested. So it's probably the easiest thing I ever did. Going back a little, any application I've done through Connecticut Humanities, that is just the highlight of using Connecticut Humanities, is that you get feedback. You don't have to change your application because the person that's reviewing it before you submit, so make sure you don't submit it beforehand, those comments don't come out. So after you correct everything, add what was suggested, then you just hit submit. It's just seamless, very easy procedure. But I would suggest do not submit your application without a review. That's probably the best part of the whole thing, because you know best. So then we had a visit by Elise Henning, lovely lady. She came for about 3 hours. The report we received is incredible that she could actually get so much in a 3-hour visit. She was right on. So a little background, Ellington Historical Society, we inherited, a new board inherited the old board. It was just elderly, they were done, and it was kind of very abrupt change of command. So we knew nothing, and inherited this archive room literally with tables with papers piled on them. About 20% of our archives was categorized and is in good shape. And we had no idea what to do. And within 3 hours, we have this report that's incredible, from short-term goals, long-term goals, what to do for storage, what you need for policies. It's just incredible. And it felt like we were drowning, and it was a life preserver, basically. So we're really excited to get moving on all the recommendations that we got from how to store things in your boxes, how to do a finding guide, just from A to Z. It was fantastic. I would highly recommend going for it.
Dianne, can I ask you, who had you shared the report with since you received it from Elise?
So all our board members, we actually have a meeting later today. So we have our archive committee consists of about 4 people, and so they got it immediately. And then it goes to our whole board, which is about a dozen people. And it's really step by step. We can follow this and really make a huge improvement on our collection. And it included a bunch of resources. It included how to go about going online with, is it called Connecticut Archives Online, or?
Yep, Connecticut's Archive Online, finding aids.
And I'm not sure our assessor kind of went above and beyond. We had a very old Past Perfect that had some documents in it, totally Greek to all of us. And she converted it into an Excel sheet for us. That might be going above and beyond, but my goodness, was it lovely. So now we have an Excel finding guide with our old information in it, because Elise happened to be good at Past Perfect and was able to do it very quickly for us. I would have never figured it out.
That is terrific. If you know the system, creating those spreadsheets isn't too hard, but it's knowing how to get to that information and how to export it. So
we would have never known. She basically, we had 2 laptops down there, the one with the Past Perfect, our new one. Within 10 minutes, we had this Excel spreadsheet.
That is a gift. That is nice to have a printout of what's in the collection. Will really help you moving forward. That is great. Anything else you want to add?
No, I just would say, do not hesitate to do this. It's incredible. We knew what we didn't know. but we didn't know how much we didn't know. So it was love. It was great experience, great person. I can only imagine everybody that does this is wonderful and knowledgeable.
Fabulous. Dianne, thank you for sharing your experience with the collections assessment grant. Elise is a fabulous archivist. She's one of our traveling archivists in the state. And I think you guys were perfectly paired up for this project. That's for sure.
Perfectly. And it's presented very calmly and step by step. That was great.
Fabulous. All right. Thank you, Dianne. So what I will do now is I'm going to share. I'm going to share the application with you. Give me 1 minute to get to it. Okay. Is that shared? Okay. So on the Connecticut Humanities website, as well as on the Conservation Connection website, you can access the collections assessment grant. There are guidelines, and you can see them right here. You can simply click on them to review. Some of that information is here on the application. Here is the big item for knowing whether or not you qualify to apply to this grant program. Your annual expenses need to be under $250,000. Okay, if it's more than that, you can't apply for this grant program. If you are an institution with expenses under $50,000, you are a priority for funding under this program. We're really trying to use this program to help build up and support our smallest institutions in the state, those that are principally volunteer run. So we've designed this to give you an extra leg up on the competition, since this is a competitive grant. Let's just scroll down. So we want to know about your, make sure that you're eligible. We need to know whether or not you own your collections. That's really important. Basic boilerplate of naming your project. And then we want to find out a little bit more about your collections and who's responsible. So we have a section where you can tell us who's in charge. Could you have curators who are paid or unpaid, an archivist, or is there someone else that's responsible? Ellington has a committee. You can say right there that there would be a committee of 4 people. But we want you to explain that to us. We want to know how you shared your collections through the public. So do you have exhibits? Are they open for research? How do people get to know what you have, and how do you display it? We also need to know how many buildings hold collections. As I mentioned, this is a half-day site visit. If you're the size of Mystic Seaport, we can't do something that large in 3-hour visit. But tell us how many buildings hold collections. Let us know if they're on the same site. This is a half-day visit. If they have to drive from one side of town to the other, we need to know if that's going to be feasible. It's helpful for us to know where collections are stored or displayed. You can see there's a variety of choices, from the attic to offsite to dedicated rooms in your facility. These applications are shared with your assessor. So this is a way that they can come up to speed about your collection and your project before they even reach out to you to have that initial conversation, before they set up the site visit and come out to your site. We want to know, how would you describe your collection storage areas for both your museum collection and your archive collection? Is there space to grow? Are they adequate? Are they full? Are they crowded? Again, it helps us understand what you're dealing with as a collection management. And have you ever had an assessment of your museum or archive collection? So for archives in the state, you might have had a visit from the traveling archivist and received an archival assessment. Maybe you participated in the collections assessment program that's offered as a federal program. Let us know if you've ever had, or maybe you paid for a private assessment from a museum consultant. Let us know what, if you've ever had someone assess your collections. tell us why your institution's collections are significant. And I will tell you, based on experience with the grant panel, they respond best to a description here if you tell us things specifically. Don't tell me that you have a great decorative arts collection and it highlights things from the Revolutionary War to 1900, because almost every museum in Connecticut could say the same thing. But what makes your institution's collections unique? Do you have the earliest loom in Connecticut? Do you have a surprisingly vast collection from your fife and drum corps in your community, or education, or women, or perhaps you have things from local mills or local collectors or local artists? Be specific so that the grant reviewers can really picture and get a really clear sense of what your collections are like. But then you have to pick. And this sometimes can be tricky, and this is something that I can help all of you with. We can only do one of your two types of collections that you collect: museum collections, and these are predominantly three-dimensional objects, furniture, glass, metal, textiles, paintings, things of that nature. Or we could do your archives, and these are your paper-based collections: documents, ledgers, photographs, postcards, manuscripts. That would be your archive. So you need to pick one or the other. And then we want you to tell us why this collection needs to be assessed. As you heard from Dianne, one of the reasons they need to be, their collection needed to be assessed, is that they inherited this collection and they found it really challenging to understand what was there and why. But a professional archivist can come in and knows how to weed through and knows how to assess what they're looking at and how to prioritize next steps. So tell us why you either want your museum or your archive assessed. And, you know, if it's a priority, if it's urgently needed, include that. Tell us why it should be done right now. And then what's your goal for this assessment? So for Dianne, it was getting intellectual control. And that means knowing what they had, how to understand what was included, and what their next steps were. So there's needs for housing. They now have a printout of early archive records, so they can use that as a basis as they move forward. What is your goal for this collection assessment? How do you hope it will support your institution going forward? Let us know how you describe yourself as an institution. Are you a historical society or a historic house museum? If you're something else, go ahead and tell us. Maybe you're a community organization or of some type. Just let us know. Let us know when you were founded and when you were incorporated. Please include your mission statement. Everybody should have an institutional mission statement. Often it's on your bylaws. And then let us know which budget range you fall into. As I said, if your budget is over $250,000, you don't qualify for this grant program. Help us understand what you're spending on your collections every year. It could be zero and you wouldn't be the only institution to put that down, but help us understand what you are spending on collections care. And that can be everything from buying boxes and supplies, things like that nature. How many months a year are you open to the public? Let us know if you have any full-time or paid staff. See those questions there. How many volunteers do you currently have at your institution? And how many visitors did you have in 2021? The other part of the application is what you would normally find on a Connecticut Humanities grant. Who's going to be the authorizing person on this grant? How do we contact them? Who's the project director and their contact information? The fiscal agent, which is usually your treasurer at most institutions, but can be a director. We would like you to attach your current board list and a current year operating budget, since we're in 2023. I guess 23 or 22, whichever you have that's most complete for us to understand. And then you can check off and sign off. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to mute until my dogs stop barking. And we can start doing some question and answer.
Great. Thanks so much, Kathy. I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat, but if anybody has anything they'd like to ask about the grant, about the process, anything you may be curious about, just raise your hand. You can do that visually, or you can use the reactions in Zoom, and I'll be happy to call on you.
So I'm going to, while we're waiting for that, I'll tell you a little bit about our assessors, that the team that we have working with us. We have 3 museum curators and collection managers. Rich Malley, recently retired from the Webb Dean Stevens Museum and formerly of Connecticut Historical Society, as well as Mystic Seaport. We all refer to him as our collection guru because he's worked in collections for so long. He's fabulous. We have Dianne Lee, who many of you will know from, if you're members of Connecticut Collections. She's the coordinator for Connecticut Collections, as well as the collection manager at the Fairfield Museum and formerly of Connecticut Historical Society. We also have Barbara Bradbury Pape, formerly the director at the Bellamy Faraday House. She has worked all over Connecticut, so she brings terrific background in collections. And we have 2 of our traveling archivists working on this project. Elise Hennig, who is a consultant who's worked in institutions of all sizes, and Nicole Bessiger, who is completing her work on the Connecticut newspaper project at the State Library, and just recently employed to work on the records collections department at the State Library. So really fabulous team of people. So from Bruce Sievers at East Haddam. Hi, Bruce. Since this is a competitive grant, can you identify the criteria used to score the applications? Sure. So in there is a score sheet that the assessors use. They're looking to see that you answer the questions in the most complete way possible. And I can't stress enough that if you write 1 or 2 sentences as an answer to any of the questions in the narrative, don't hold your breath about getting a grant, okay? You don't need to write War and Peace, but you need to articulate as completely as you can about your collections, why they're important to you, why the rest of us should also see them as significant, why this assessment is important to you now. Are you building a wing and need to move the collection? So you need to have an idea of what your collection includes and a safe way to move them. Are you trying to bring in more researchers and more students for Connecticut History Day, or teachers? And if this collection, if you have more information on this collection, you could share it with those people. If you have exhibits that need changeover and you need to understand whether or not those collections are safely exhibited or how you could improve that. The more you share, the more you can say to make your application unique, the better chance that you will stand out and be remembered by the grant reviewers when they're comparing you to everyone else who has applied. So make your application unique. Make sure we understand what's in your collection so that it's memorable, and write nice, complete responses. I cannot tell you how much I've gone to so many of your sites, and when I read an application that's only a couple sentences, I'm like, oh, but they should have mentioned X, Y, and Z. So that's why, if you can get, the deadline for submission is May 19th. If you get your submissions in within a week of that deadline and put in a draft and just shoot me an email and say, my draft is in, could you look it over? I will look it over, and I can leave comments in that draft, and I will let you know that my comments are in there, and then you can look at it. And I will tell you, all right, you're on a good trail, but you need to say more about X, Y, or Z. believe it or not, there are times where I've even said, you're applying for a museum grant, but you keep talking about your archives. You keep talking about the paper. So let's discuss what the priority is. That's why I want you all. It's really helpful if you all email me and we set up a time to talk, because I can talk to you about like, all right, so why are you picking archives? And we could talk about what you're looking for, or maybe you're not sure which to pick. Let's talk about it. Let's have you get a draft into Connecticut Humanities grant portal. I'll take a look at it, and then we can even talk about it again after you see my comments. But the most important thing, make your application stand out. And standing out sometimes can be honest as saying, our archives are all over the place, and we have no idea how to bring them together. Where should we bring them together? What are the steps we can take? We know we've seen things that are really lovely and relevant. Tell us what those are. But lack of information is okay. Just tell us why you need this. Okay. Does that help? Okay. I got
That's
two
helpful,
thumbs up
Kathy.
from Bruce.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, and I would emphasize, and it's even great if you can get them into Kathy like with more than a week to go before the deadline, because
That would
then
be
she has
better.
more time to give you comments. I'll just say that. But the opportunity to take advantage of that advanced review and to have a conversation with Kathy preliminarily so you can sort of start on the right foot with your application is a really great opportunity. Lorianne, what's your question? Please unmute and share it.
Okay, well, before I ask the question, I just want to say that contacting Kathy is great, because I did that for the last grant that I did for our museum makeover. And she gives you great ideas for someone like me who's, the lone wolf at my organization in the office, talk you down off the ledge, of that, what you've got going on and how complicated it's going to be. And also it help you see things that, because you may be so overwhelmed, you're not even thinking of. And so that was really great. But my question is, for the point of completion, when we talk about October being the completion of the grant, how complete are we talking? Because obviously I would think if you're getting a report, you're not going to be able to get everything on that checklist done by October. There may be things, this is going to be sort of like an ongoing process.
Yeah, actually the close date is just to make sure you have that report in hand. You don't have to move forward on any of that stuff yet, because we don't expect that. You need to sit down, you need to go over it with your board and whatever committees you have, figure out what fits into your budget. There's a lot of things to think about as you start discussing what to implement and how. And you may need to go for additional grants to do that. Only thing that has to be done is you have to have that grant report, that assessment report in hand by October 1st. So that's where you and I are partners. I'm pushing on my side on the assessors to make sure it's done, and you push from your side. They're terrific. I don't think we're going to have a problem, but should Connecticut lose power for 8 weeks and nobody can type, that could always happen. But that's all we're talking about. Completion date is just having your assessment report in hand. You will have a really brief, because I don't believe in long final reports because I have to write them all the time. You have a brief online final report and evaluation to do after October 1st that you'll have about a month to complete. But that's it. I am not expecting anybody to kind of jump off and have done any of the work yet at that point. So.
Thanks for clarifying that, Kathy. John, you've got a question. Go ahead, unmute yourself and ask it. Can you unmute yourself, John?
Hi.
There you go.
John Capadonna here, Wintonberry Historical Society in Bloomfield. We made an application to the first round, and Kathy told us at that time, Kathy, you told us we're more appropriate for what I wanted to accomplish to apply for this grant. So here we are. We're going to jump in. We'll get our application in very quickly, or for your review. I have to tell you, I read the qualifying criteria and what the grant is meant to do, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page. We have a small historical society, all volunteers, in a pretty small town. We have some great artifacts. Everybody does, great collections, but we need to exhibit them more professionally. I'm afraid it's a little bit of a mom and pop organization that we have, with great moms and pops. They're great people, but we want to get people in the door. We want our town to realize what we got. I have to say, the importance of this is introducing our town to our historical society and our collections. And so that's what we want. Do you think your assessors would be appropriate for this?
Absolutely. So if you were doing something with exhibits, typically we focus more on museum collections than
Yeah.
archive, just because they're a little hardier for
Yeah.
long-term display. So you might want to pursue like a museum assessment. And I know a little bit about your collection, having spoken to you and others at Wittenberry. But yes, we will talk about, and they make suggestions as to how you could improve existing exhibits, how to incorporate other collections more effectively for visitors.
Right.
All the assessors have been in so many institutions, seen so many examples, and they themselves have worked with small institutions and large ones. So they've seen the gamut of how we can exhibit and display our collections. There are some great low-tech, low solutions out there, and that is actually one of my requirements for them, in that in both exhibitions and storage, they look for low-cost, low-tech solutions that they can recommend to you. You know, the last thing we're going to tell you do is, you know, have a custom-built case with LED lighting and security and say, what, you can't come up with the $5,000 that's going to cost? No. We'll talk to you about how to make that affordable and solutions, but absolutely that would be something that would be covered by the grant report.
Great, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Do we do that good a job explaining it that there's so few questions? I'm going to think that. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to think that and just assume that for the hell of it. So. Anyone else? You know, the nice thing about the collections assessment grant is that you're really sharing why your collections are important and why you need this. This isn't having to share any developed humanities themes or consultants. This is probably one of the simplest grant projects you could apply for in Connecticut right now. And what we're really trying to do is provide you not only with museum and archive professionals to have conversations with on site about your own collections, and then provide you with this report with priorities and recommendations. But our hope is that you develop a really wonderful relationship with your assessor, that they become someone that you feel comfortable going to when you have questions. But we want to help your institution grow so that these other grant opportunities that have been available in Connecticut, from museum makeover to quick grants to capacity grants at Connecticut Humanities, are well within your reach. And the more you know about your institution's collections and the work you need to embark on, the stronger those other applications are going to be in the future. But if that's all the questions, I think we can wrap up a little early today, Amherst.
That's always fine with me. And it keeps the recording short too. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I will thank you all for being here. With a special thanks to Dianne from Ellington, to Kathy, especially to Lian for being here, and to Emily. I think Kathy, if if you have any additional links that you want to get out in the follow-up email, please let Emily know, and we'll make sure to get that follow-up out to everybody. I can stay on for a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but Kathy's honestly the one who can answer them all, so.
Well, I'm popping my email into the chat because I forgot to
Great.
do that before we got all this started. And I'm
Thank you,
hoping I
yeah.
didn't spell it wrong, but I didn't. So you can email me there and we can set up a time to talk about your grant application and any questions you have.
Excellent. Thanks so much for taking the time today, everyone. We hope to see applications from all of you, and it's really, we're really excited at the League about this opportunity. I think, we've long been advertising the American Institute for Conservation's collections assessment program, but that is just it's a heavy lift, I think, for small organizations. And so I am just so pleased at this partnership between CTH and the Connecticut Heritage Foundation to provide collections assessment services to the little guys, who are really, we're the ones who need the most, right? Need that leg up and that help and that advice for, where to begin and what the next steps can be. Because I think, as Dianne was sharing, this can really be a document and a tool that can guide your progress as an organization for many years hence, and help you think big about what you might be able to accomplish with those next steps. So thanks for being here, and we hope to see you again at a future League program.
Thank you, everybody. Look forward to talking with you, and thank you to the League for hosting us.
Absolutely.
And to Dianne Trueb for sharing her experiences with us today.